Welcome to meeting number 38 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. The committee is meeting today from 4:11 to 6:11 today to hear from the President of the Treasury Board and officials on the subject matter of the Supplementary Estimates A 2021-2022. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. To ensure an orderly meeting, and please be easy on me, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on your microphone icon to activate your mic. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. To raise a point of order during the meeting, committee members should ensure their microphone is unmuted and say point of order to get the chair's attention. The clerk and analysts are participating in this meeting virtually today. If you need to speak to them during the meeting, please email them through the committee email address. The clerk can also be reached on his mobile phone. For those who are participating in the committee room, that are required unless seated and when physically distancing is not possible. I will now invite the President of Treasury Board to make his opening statement. After approximately 60 minutes, the President will leave. It will not be necessary to suspend as only one other witnesses will be joining the panel and he will be tested before the meeting starts. J'aimerais remercier le Président du Conseil du Trésor.
I would like to thank the President of the Treasury Board for being with us today. And I would also like to thank the officials that will be with us afterwards for a 60-minute period. Questions will be asked. So, Mr. Clerk, the President of the Treasury Board has 10 minutes. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay. Mr. President, we will give you the floor. Thank you. Mr. Chair, or Vice Chair, I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to speak about the supplementary estimates A 2021-2022, which were tabled on May 27th. I'm joined today by the following TBS officials: Glenn Purves, Assistant Secretary, Expenditure Management Sector; Roger Ermeth, Assistant Controller General, Financial Management Sector, Office of the Controller General; Karen Cahill, Assistant Secretary and Chief Financial Officer for the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat; Sonia Reid, Acting Assistant Secretary, Digital and Services Policy; and Tolga Yalkin, ADM, Workplace Policies and Services.
So one part of a broad set of reports, including the departmental plans, the fiscal monitor, the departmental results reports, in the public accounts that provide information on spending plans and outcomes to Canadians and parliamentarians. We also report through GC Info, an interactive online tool that presents a wealth of federal data in a visual manner. Starting late last fiscal year, we made several changes to enhance the presentation of the supplementary estimates. For example, we published additional information relating to the COVID-19 response in both the table estimates and an online annex. We also expanded GC Infobase with more information on planned spending authorities and expenditures for COVID-19 response measures. Monsieur le Président, les modifications apportées.
Mr. Chair, changes to forecasts of statutory spending, including those pending parliamentary approval in the first Budget Implementation Act of 2021, are also included in these estimates. This provides a more complete estimate of the government's total planned expenditures. Through these supplementary estimates, the government is seeking parliamentary approval of $24 billion in new voted spending. With this proposed spending, the health, safety, and well-being of Canadians are front and center. Approximately 11.2 billion of the proposed voted spending responds to the public health, social, and economic impacts on Canadians of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of that amount, some of the top expenditures include 1.5 billion for medical research, development, and the purchase of vaccines, $1.1 billion for enhanced border and travel measures and isolation sites, and $760.6 million for the Indigenous Community Support Fund.
Also provide funding for economic responses to the pandemic, including support for targeted sectors and businesses, and to promote growth through the recovery period. In addition, these supplementary estimates propose funding to address homelessness, the lack of affordable housing, and food insecurity, all of which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. We also continue in our commitment to Indigenous peoples with proposed funding to settle claims and to provide housing and infrastructure in Indigenous communities, child and family supports, as well as in mental health and wellness support. Turning to funding for the Treasury Board Secretariat, the department is asking $19 million for Phoenix stabilization and HR to pay initiatives. This funding is required to improve pay-related HR processes and systems and to support new and ongoing employees who are addressing compensation and labor relations work related to Phoenix. De plus, Monsieur le Président, le secrétariat.
In addition, Mr. Chair, TBS received an $89,000 transfer from the Department of Employment and Social Development to support the Employment Equity Task Force. The task force's mandate is to study, consult, and advise on how a renewed employment equity regime could be implemented in a way that supports diversity, inclusion, and respect for people. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, my officials and I thank the committee for exercising diligence in their ongoing study of the government spending to support Canadians during these challenging times. We are now available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. And you allowed the members of the committee the opportunity to ask questions for an extra 4 minutes.
For 6 minutes, and just so you understand my style, Mr. McCauley, I will put the 1 minute time mark. I know you keep your timer on, but I will put the 1 minute time mark in my screen, so look for it. Mr. McCauley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You're doing a fabulous job. Minister, welcome back. Although we have our disagreements, obviously, I sincerely glad to see you back and doing well. I want to just talk about SNC-Lavalin quickly. Now, your government gave $150 million sole source contract to SNC-Lavalin for mobile health units. Now, the issue is that no province asked for this. PHAC did not ask for this. Public Health did not ask for this or ask for these mobile health units. But they were declared such an urgency, they had to be sole sourced to SNC-Lavalin. I'd like to know, did that go through the Treasury Board process for this $150 million?
Well, thank you first for your kind words. It's always nice to see and to hear you. I, of course, won't need to remind everyone that we've been in a pandemic with severe health and economic outcomes. And therefore, a number of investments were important to go through that pandemic. But for further insight and details on your important question, let me turn to Mr. Ermuth, who is a specialist in this
area. Just a quick yes or no if it went through the Treasury Board approval process.
And that's exactly what I will ask Mr. Roger Ermuth to provide.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. In terms of this contract, I'm actually not specifically aware of what process it went through. The decision of whether or not a sole source would be made is made by the specific department.
Right. No, I'm just curious if it went through the process. Minister, let me ask you. Nobody has asked for these health units or mobile health units. They haven't been deployed. So I'm wondering, as your role as the ultimate guardian of taxpayers' money and providing oversight, do you approve of this money being used for something that no one apparently asked for, and nothing's getting used?
Well, thank you for the question again. And as we have just heard a moment ago, this is a matter for Public Health and Health Canada to provide more details on. But I would be glad to turn back to Mr.
No, but I'm asking, Minister, if you, as Canada's chief, guardian of taxpayers' interests, as your role of Treasury Board President, do you approve of that $150 million sole source contract? The reason I ask, in the supplementary estimates, there's an additional $660 million for mobile public health units. Now, we've heard that the government hasn't used any of these from SNC, but we see another $660 million in the supplementary estimates. How much is that going for SNC, and why is the government continuing to pour money into mobile health units that aren't being used?
Very good. So if you would like to have further details on the precise role of the estimates process in guiding the procurement process to which you allude, let me turn to Mr. Pers, who is.
I realize that they're requested by PSPC, but they're in your supplementary estimates, and Treasury Board, which put out the supplementary estimates, have it in the highlights. So I assume someone at Treasury Board knows some more details about this, actually $651 million for health units.
And you're well informed, and that's a tribute to your experience and expertise in the matter. So it's a matter of Health Canada, which would, in most cases, as in the case of most departments, work with PSPC. So let me turn to Minister Pers, who would be able to address the connection between the estimates process and that procurement
just
exercise.
Quickly, please.
No, I think that in that aspect, Mr. McCauley, you've had two pieces of information that you've been looking for. One is what proportion is going to SNC. I don't have that information. Okay.
How much of the $650 million is going to public health or for mobile health units when none of them have been used in Eastern Canada? So I'm wondering why another $650 million. Now, obviously, it's in the estimate, so it's gone through the Treasury Board approval process. So I'm hoping someone from Treasury Board can tell us why there's extra $650 million.
I think on that instance where you're asking specifically for the mobile health units that are captured in that, we'd be happy to get back to the committee on that with liaising with public health.
Let me just go back to the supplementary estimates. Now, we've seen the I can't find a word for it, disgusting, I guess, the government bailout to Air Canada, which, of course, taxpayers' money, both in the wage subsidy, which we heard, by the way, didn't apparently go through Treasury Board process either, but the wage subsidy was used to pay off Air Canada executives. Now, I see in the estimates, there's funding for regional air transportation initiatives. There's almost $30 million. Is any of that money going to airlines themselves, including Air Canada?
Thank you. Well, first on the wage subsidy,
my question is specifically regarding the $30 million in the supplementary estimates. Is any of that going to airlines or specifically Air Canada?
Okay, so if you wish, I'm here to be helpful. If you wish, I can quickly address the wage subsidy.
No, I'm asking about the $30 million in the supplementary estimates, if any of that's going to airlines or Air Canada.
Very
Seeing
good.
it's in the SOPs and you've detailed it in your summary, I assume you must know.
So let me...
And I apologize, but I hate to be the gatekeeper for time, but it is time. And I will now move to Mr. Kuzmierczuk. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. Minister, again, wonderful to see you at committee yet again, and really appreciate you taking the time with us and really appreciate the answers that you're providing us as well. In the PBO report on the supplementary estimates A, it highlights recent improvements the government's reporting on COVID-19 response spending, including through additions to GC Infobase. Can you share with us, the committee, what measures you have taken to improve transparency in your financial reporting?
Well, thank you, Eric, and let me also thank you and all the committee members, because we're not only very grateful to you, but also very mindful of the very, very intense work you've done over the last weeks and months in this very extraordinary circumstance in which we find ourselves as Canadians. So it's a specific thank you to you, but a thank you to the whole team, obviously. So on the transparency, we know, and we don't only know, we also hear from Canadians how important it is for the Canadian government to be transparent. And that's why we have put into place a number of different practices. Some of them were there before the pandemic, such as the GC Infobase, the departmental plan, the departmental results reports. We have enhanced the ability for parliamentarians such as you to connect the information in the estimates, which is sometimes quite complicated. And that's why I'm here today with my officials to connect that with the budget process, which is equally complicated, but working on different rules and following different timelines. So it's all a matter of being as clear and transparent as we can be, so we can demonstrate to Canadians the results of our investments for them and their families.
That's terrific, Minister. I really appreciate that. And I know that this committee had asked for monthly spending reports as well, too. And I'm just wondering what advantages that you see that this monthly reporting has sort of yielded or provided in terms of additional oversight and additional transparency. How has this process, in your opinion, benefited that transparency?
Well, you were not only right, but you were entitled to ask for these monthly reports because of the obviously extremely severe and rapidly changing circumstances of the pandemic. So you were provided with this information, which enabled you to connect the size, the nature of the different investments that we were making, alongside other important processes, as we all know, which is the budget process and the legislative process, because Mr. McCauley earlier alluded to the wage subsidy, but that was an extremely important piece of work that Parliament did alongside the estimates process and the work of your committee. So thank you, Majid, and thank you everyone for having asked for that. And I know and hear that it's been useful to your committee.
Minister, I just think that it's incredible that we've got this enormous amount of information that your staff has diligently and quickly put together. It's almost like we're seeing the expenditures in real time. And so it must have been a tremendous output or commitment on your team's part, and again, it's something that is incredibly appreciated because it is quite helpful. But it's an amazing amount of information that you've been able to provide us over a short period of time, and I think it just demonstrates how you've prioritized transparency and communication on your team.
And Eric, I would add, I would congratulate you on those specific words, because you seem to understand the value and the difficulty of the work that they do at the Secretariat. It's a very challenging role that they play. Not easy, because they have to provide appropriate answers to your appropriate questions, but they're working in real time, as you said, especially in the context of the pandemic, which is moving so quickly also in real time.
Well, thank you, Minister. I've got one question left, and I know that we're almost we've got about a minute and a half left. But can you update this committee on your work to modernize the Treasury Board's rules on federal procurement?
Yes, that's a very good question. Now we want the procurement process to be both efficient, open, inclusive, and align with the priorities of Canadians in our government. So first, efficient, because we want that to be efficient using modern technology, obviously. We also want it to be inclusive of those businesses and those people that want to partner with the federal government in advancing our common objectives of social, economic, and sustainable development. We want that to be open and transparent, again, to facilitate both the efficiency and the inclusiveness. And we want that to be aligned with the social and environmental and economic objectives of our government. And let me speak quickly about these social objectives, the objectives of supporting, for instance, indigenous procurement, making sure that indigenous businesses are able to flourish and to participate fully in our procurement activities. Green procurement practices, green supply chains, these are objectives of our procurement.
And I'm sorry, Monsieur Duclos, but I will have to jump in as time is over. And I see Mr. Kitchen, the chair is back. I told you I was here not for a long time, but for a good time. Mr. Chair, we are at Madame Chabot from the Bloc Québécois. If you're ready, I will cede the chair back to you.
And thank you, Mr. Drouin, and thank you for doing an excellent job, and I appreciate that. And we will now start with Madame Chabot, and I believe it's 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for your presence. It's a pleasure for me to be here at your committee today as a replacement. It's really interesting. So, Mr. Minister, you know, and we've regularly come back on this. If we look at the naval strategy, La Dévi, inaudible sound. My question is simple. When will we have the confirmation that the Davy will officially become partner in this naval strategy? Thank you. We're very pleased to have you here at committee today. Two important challenges that I have. The first one is that this is not the jurisdiction of my department. It's from Supply, National Defense, and Fisheries. This is not my file, but the second issue is that it would be a pleasure for me to speak to the Davy, and since 2015 we have done extraordinary progress on this shipyard. Every time I go to my riding, I see this shipyard, and I speak to them. The thousands of workers are going through a major transformation. So I understand you don't have the answer to my question. In your opinion, on the cost, how much are these delays in the naval strategy costing? Have you cost estimates for this? Answer. The costs are public, and once again, to have specific detail, and you should have very specific detail, you have to ask the question to Supply and Services or to Fisheries and Oceans with regards to these icebreakers. But Mrs. Chabot, if you want to meet with me, I will speak with you at length. Yes, I'll call you. It'd be a pleasure. So now I would like to talk about Phoenix. The Phoenix system, of course, is something that is a huge issue in our files. Our citizens and our writings are very concerned. As you know, compensation with the agreements were imposed. And the unions are saying that you are responsible, that you did not transmit the necessary documents to CRA so that the employees would not be taxed. And so why didn't you do this, and how much are you going to recover? Thank you, Mrs. Chabot, once again. Two important things with regards to Phoenix. Number one, we have to repeat and remind ourselves that it is totally unacceptable for workers to not be paid on time and correctly for a service rendered, especially in a context of the Canadian government. And that is why, for many years now, with the assistance of some MPs, on the committee, we have worked very hard to try to correct this. Also, the damages, not only economic, but also personal, emotional, the stress, concern, and worry that accompanies these delays. It was absolutely crucial to work with the unions, and we did this in order to offer compensation. Compensation is being sent out to the employees, including former employees of the public service, people who suffered. But how much money did you recover? Because you taxed these compensation amounts. Compensation is damage. We don't know why this was taxed, but how much are you going to recover? How much money are you going to recover on these compensation agreements? As for the fiscal issues linked to compensation, we have to ask the questions to CRA. Also, you can consult Section 18 of the agreement that was signed with the unions, the public service unions, to understand public information, and this has been public for quite a while, and CRA used this information in order to make the decision. So it wouldn't be because documents were not sent out. I have another question. How much will be spent to replace Phoenix? How much is the stabilization of Phoenix costing right now? Well, I could ask Karen to answer. She is our specialist, and she can provide the most up-to-date information. Is this a huge amount? Well, I know that you want to have a specific answer, and that's why I would invite Karen to speak.
Alors, merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you for the question. Over the past few years, the Treasury Board Secretariat did receive funding for the stabilization of the Phoenix pay system. To date, we have received approximately $30 million over a certain number of years. However, the expenditures are clearly identified in the public accounts, so I would invite you to consult the public accounts for specific amounts for the stabilization of the Phoenix pay system.
Ms. Cahill, and that brings the end of our 6 minutes. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 6 minutes.
Thank you. My constituents in Hamilton Centre are paying very close attention to the ongoing proceedings as it relates to residential schools and the Crown and Indigenous responsibilities to Indigenous and First Nations communities across the country. I note that the Crown and Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs is requesting $610 million under Vote 1 for the Federal Indian Day School Settlement Agreement, which includes compensations for persons who attended a federally established, funded, controlled, and operated Indian Day School during the period from January 1st, 1920 until its closure or transfer from Canada's control. Mr. Chair, through you, how many people do you expect to be compensated Federal School Settlement Agreement?
Thank you, Matthew, and always happy and privileged to be in your virtual company. I would say that obviously this has been a top concern of my colleagues, Minister Bennett and Minister Miller. Now, for the precise link between the estimates process and those investments and those actions, let me turn to Glenn Purves, who is most able to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Green. You wanted to know effectively how many claims have been received and how many. So as of January 27th of this year, over 98,000 claims have been received and more than 48,000 survivors have received payments for individual compensation under the settlement.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, what is the deadline, if any, for people to apply for compensation?
Mr. Purves, would you like to provide further precisions?
I think on that one, we would have to follow up with the department. I don't, unless I can find it somewhere, I don't have that answer. Yeah.
Okay. The Department of Industry is requesting $57 million under Vote 10, grants and contributions for Sanofi Canada for the construction of a vaccine manufacturing facility. This initiative is related to COVID-19. Is the $57 million a grant or a contribution to Sanofi Canada?
Let me, before I turn to Mr. Purves for the right and precise information, let me say, Matthew, Mr. Green, that this is such an outstanding and important question in the context of our investments in biomanufacturing in Canada. Now, I have the privilege of having Medicago in my riding. Medicago is the only company now to be
respectfully, as I commented earlier on, you may be the best penalty killer in the business. I have 3 minutes left. I would like to know if it's a grant or a contribution, respectfully, Mr.
I understand. I won't speak to you about my writing anymore, but I'll turn back to Mr. Purves for an answer.
It's a contribution.
It's a contribution, so no strings attached, no agreements around perhaps preferential procurement in the future. Do we know if the vaccine manufacturing facility will be producing COVID-19 vaccines? And is there anything within the contribution or the grant agreement that we would receive some kind of procurement consideration?
Well,
Mr. Green, go ahead.
Go, Mr. Purves. You'll be in a better position.
Mr. Green, we're looking at it through the lens of the spending authority provided, and so that's where Treasury Board has that expertise. But as pertaining to the actual details of the agreement and the contribution agreement and exactly what's going to be produced, that's something that the Department of Industry would be better placed to respond with.
If I could ask, if my memory serves me correct, and I remember the language of contribution agreements in relation to the WE scandal, is it that the contribution agreements can be used as like a sole source kind of, is there a different process for contribution agreements that make it perhaps less vetted, or what would be the process for the sake of this conversation in terms of the difference between a contribution agreement and a grant?
Well, sorry, Mr. First. I think you and I are quite well aligned, but I'll let you speak.
No, I would prefer to hear from you, Mr. Duclos. If you could be on the record, that'd be great.
Well, I'll say it in different words, but the answer is the same. I think my colleague, in this case, my colleagues, Minister Anand and Minister Champagne, would be delighted to provide you with the right details. If you want, we can ask them to be in touch with your office.
Is the Treasury Board not privy to final approval of contribution agreements? And if so, what are the parameters which your Treasury would have to go through you, Mr. Chair, to make approvals for contribution agreements?
Well, the Treasury Board does two things in regards to those files. First, first assess and then eventually provide the policy authorities, and that includes whether grants or loans can be provided and under which conditions. And the second thing that the Treasury Board needs to do is provide the financial authorities, and that's obviously related to the estimates process, and you're part of it by through the virtue of your work and by inviting my team and I to be here today.
So how is it different than a grant?
The difference between a contribution and a grant?
Correct.
Well, these are obviously important distinctions. I would again defer to our colleague, Ministers Anand and Champagne, to explain exactly whether and how there is a difference between those two things in the particular context of their operations.
Thank you, Minister. And that ends our first round. We'll now go to our second round, and we will start with 5 minutes with Mr. Paul Hughes.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Minister. First question, your colleague, Minister Anand, said that only one business for PPE, and then they talked about another company. And can you tell us how many companies have been sued for non-respect of contracts or breach of contract under COVID? Thank you, Mr. Paulus. I'm very pleased to see you here. Now, Your question is quite legitimate. Now, if you want to have a very specific answer, you should ask either the Department of Justice, if you're talking about legal action, or Mrs. Anand, responsible for supply. So you don't know? You don't know how many legal procedures are underway? So supply management is managed by Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Duclos. I thought that as president of the TBS, you were managing the money spent by the government. And if it's spent by people who don't deliver, well, we don't manage legal proceedings. Thank you. I have a memo here from April 2020. Delegation of authority. People were given increased authority for expenditures, and now this delegation of authority has been renewed up until December 31st, 2021. We're no longer in a crisis management mode. We're at the end of the pandemic. So can you tell me why we need to renew this important level of a delegation of authority? Answer, yes, there has been a renewal of this and also readjustments. To have more detailed answers, I'm going to give the floor to Roger Ermes. He's the specialist here today.
The question. In terms of, yes, so there are some of the delegations have been continued on now until the end of December. I think my I guess clarifying question would be if it's in relation to some of the extra expenditures authorities. I might turn to Mr. Purvis. If it's in relation to some of the procurement, which I'm not sure how your question is being asked, would be happy to give a little bit more detail.
It's about the memo from last year. Delegation of authorities, new emergency contracting limits to address pandemic situation.
Sure. Sure. Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for in terms of the clarification around in relation to procurement. So yes, there was some procurement flexibilities given in the early days of the
yes, but my question, sorry, is just I want to know why we extend to December 31st, because we don't need it anymore.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. In terms of why we extended it, it's more limited at this point in terms of the departments that have access to it. And the rationale for that is the pandemic is still evolving. And in order to be flexible and available to meet whatever demands come out in the next little bit, it was extended. But it will be reviewed again in the lead up to December.
Thank you, Mr. Mertz. Thank you. Monsieur le Ministre, reste...
Mr. Minister, I have a little bit of time left. So right now the pandemic is in a decline, and we see the inflation that's on the way. You're a professor of economics, so personally, are you concerned with the situation for Canada, the economic situation for Canada? Answer, we're being vigilant because the pandemic is close to ending, and this is a health issue for which we're going to continue to have solid investment to protect the health and safety of Canadians. But our economy has suffered enormously over the past few months, and if we're going to recover solidly, we have to continue to invest for a certain amount of time. Now, this will allow us to exit the crisis, but also to be strong and solid economically and in a fiscal position over the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will now go to Mr. Drouin for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I would like to thank the President of the Treasury Board Secretariat for being here today to defend the supplementary estimates. you were an ally of the francophonie and the defense of the francophonie on many different opportunities. I've heard you speak to official languages yesterday. The minister presented Bill C-32 for the modernization of the Official Languages Act. And this is seeking to protect the fact that bilingual judges must be appointed to the Supreme Court. The French language is being protected, and we realize that we're trying to put the French language on an equal footing as the English language, and so that measures need to be taken because we're living in a minority setting on a continent. So the Treasury Board has a major role to play to ensure this protection. Could you explain to me what will be the new role played by the Treasury Board through C-32? Well, thank you very much, Francis, and I would like to thank you in particular because you are a very strong and credible representative of the Franco-Ontarian community, and we're very fortunate to have you as an MP. We know that you're speaking from the heart and from experience. So it's a little bit strange to say this virtually, but we're very proud of your contribution. Now, the bill that was tabled yesterday is a major bill. It modernizes the Official Languages Act. In Quebec, the right to work and to be served in French will be protected, and this is true in regions that have a large proportion of francophones. We will invest in Radio-Canada and CBC in order to maintain this presence throughout the Francophone regions of Canada. We will seek to improve Francophone immigration throughout the country, to appoint bilingual judges to the Supreme Court of Canada, to make sure that the Official Languages Commissioner will have increased powers. We will implement the Court Challenges program that will allow minority language communities to defend their rights. Additional powers will be conferred in order to ensure that federal institutions are complying. This has to do with Part 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Official Languages Act. Also, we will assess the efficiency of policies and programs of federal institutions when these policies and programs have as an objective to support minority linguistic communities throughout the country. Also, we will work very hard in order to increase standards and results with regards to bilingualism within the public service to make sure that all civil servants that are able to want to work in the language of their choice are able to do so in principle. So a lot of progress, significant progress will be made with this modernization of the Official Languages Act.
Et je veux continuer dans cette veine-là.
Thank you. Let me continue. You know that at some point in time, whether it be through the FCFA, we were talking about either the Privy Council office that would take the lead versus the Treasury Board. Could you explain to me why, or perhaps you or your officials can explain why, but explain to the importance why the Treasury Board is going to take the lead on this and make sure that the Official Languages Act will be complied with throughout the departments? Answer: this is an excellent question. So the objective is simple. It is to have a watchdog within the Canadian government to make sure that departments are doing their work with regards to official languages. We need a central agency for this, something like the Treasury Board or the Privy Council. These two are central agencies to do this watchdog type of work. We had this when Stéphane Dion was with us a long time ago. He had implemented this work at the Privy Council. Unfortunately, the following government, I won't name it, eliminated this watchdog presence within the Privy Council. In 2015, this did not exist anymore. So as you say very clearly, many organizations trying to defend the rights of linguistic communities have asked for this. So this is fine that it will be at the Treasury Board because we already have this in the Act. We have obligations, duties to ensure that language rights are respected. But we'll go even further because the Act will be reinforced, and Treasury Board will have increased power to do its job. Thank you.
Now to Mademoiselle Chabot, 5 minutes. Sorry, 2.5 minutes.
Merci. Thank you. Well, first of all, I would have a comment. I'm fascinated by all these answers that we can hear with regards to Bill. I asked questions earlier on the strategy, on the naval strategy, and as the president of the Treasury Board, you had trouble providing figures. But anyway, in any case, I'm going to ask the president of the Treasury Board with regards to compensation for Phoenix. We know that TBS asked $7 million under Credit 10 in order to compensate former employees for the harm linked to Phoenix. In 2019, agreements were signed, compensation was paid. Agreements in 2020, people will be able to make their request for compensation as of the fall, I believe. This is my question. Have you foreseen additional monies to respond to all of these requests for compensation that are due to ex-employees?
Pardon, j'allais vous dire merci.
Answer? I was on mute, sorry. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Now, with regards to the Official Languages Act, the reason why I can speak at length is that I am signatory of the memo to Cabinet that led to this modernization, and the Treasury Board is heavily involved, as I was saying. So now, with regards to Phoenix, as you said, 2 agreements have been signed, one in June 2019, the other in the fall of 2020. So measures were put into place in order to pay out compensation. As for the detail of these compensation payments, Mrs. Cahill can take them. Mr. Minister, could you tell us, can you just tell me if the Treasury Board Secretariat will ask for additional funds in order to pay for all of this? That's a great question. And to have the correct answer, I'm going to ask Mrs. Cahill to speak. Thank you. So within the framework of Phoenix agreements, the funding that we currently have covers both agreements. We continue to work jointly with the negotiating bodies with regards to harm caused by the Phoenix pay system. Right now, I cannot tell you if we're going to have to request new funds or not, but the funds that we've received and that are found in Credit 10, as you mentioned, do cover the current agreements.
Ms. Cahill, we'll now go to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Recent reports suggest that Hamilton is now less affordable than Los Angeles in New York City. There are also reports that a condo developer is looking to invest $1 billion in buying up single-family homes. I know that the Honourable Minister in his prior role was responsible for the National Housing Strategy, so I know he'll be able to answer, hopefully with some degree of specificity, the following questions. Under the CMHC's request for $1.5 billion under Vote 1, how much of this funding would go towards female-focused housing, and how many new affordable housing units would be converted and built with the requested funding?
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you for the reminder that I was indeed closer in the earlier mandate to our investment strategy to make it more affordable, more inclusive, and safer for Canadians to find a home. And I would point out that Minister Hussein has been extremely active on that in the last year and a half. Now, for the precise details on the estimates number that you mentioned, the $2.5 billion, let me turn to Glenn quickly. I know you.
1.5. It's under the Rapid Housing Initiative to help Mr. Purvis perhaps find it. How many new affordable housing units would be converted, and how many of them would go towards women-focused housing projects?
it's a great question. Let's see whether whether Glenn has the information.
Sure. So the funding will support the creation of a minimum of 4,500 new affordable housing units for Canadians. At least 25% of that 1.5 billion will go towards women-focused housing projects, and units will be constructed within 12 months of when funding is provided.
And how do they afford? Does CMHC still define affordability of 125% of market value? Or are we talking about real affordability in closer to the 80% range?
It's not. I don't have the answer to that. That's
Mr. Duclos, in your previous role as the minister responsible for the National Housing Strategy, how would you define affordable housing?
It's well, the answer and the right answer, I believe, and again, you might want to talk to my colleague, Minister Hussein, for the current state of the affairs. It's based on local conditions, obviously, and sensitive to local views on what is affordable, because we need to work with provinces and territories.
But I believe the CMHC, who's responsible for it, defines it at 125% of affordability.
Thank you, Minister. And we'll now go to Ms. Harder for 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. Minister, one of the things that you've talked a lot about, and Minister Anand has talked a lot about, is the importance of our relationship with the Indigenous people. And originally in her mandate letter, it was set out that she would procure 5% of all contracts with Indigenous-led businesses. You've talked about the importance of that here today even. But unfortunately, when it comes to procuring anything really, that rate is actually only 2%. So 2% of all procurements are being given to Indigenous-led businesses, which is a tremendous failure in comparison to the 5%, which is what the original mandate letter set out to do or asked to do. Now, in the meantime, sole source contract was given to China for PPE. Why wasn't there a competitive process? And why wasn't, opportunity given to Indigenous-led businesses?
Well, thank you, Ms. Harder. Thank you, Rachel, for asking the question. I suppose and suspect you were there initially at the beginning of the meeting when we talked about the importance of thinking about procurement in a broad way, both obviously the important advantages of providing services and goods to Canadians through appropriate procurement, also the economic advantages, the fact that we want procurement to be increasingly green
Minister, my question is very direct, and so a direct answer would be appropriate.
And that's exactly where I was going to, because past then the green procurement supply chain that we want to build, there is a social impact in procurement and supporting.
Why was a sole source given to China instead of an Indigenous-led business? They were deliberately ignored.
So supporting Indigenous businesses and workers is exactly what the objective of this.
Then why was a sole source contract given to China?
So supporting those Indigenous businesses, workers, and communities is, as you said.
You're supporting them by giving a sole source contract to China?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I'm able to.
You're certainly not answering appropriately. You're right.
Ms. Harder is asking, because I think she needs and deserves a correct answer, but it's a bit hard to provide one being interrupted so quickly. But I can try perhaps to switch to Mr. Ermuth, who would know the details around procurement, at least be able to refer Ms. Harder to the appropriate channels and information points.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of procurement strategy and what was purchased and in terms of the PPE, especially during the early days of the pandemic and so on, I would defer to our colleagues at the PSPC in terms of what was the rationale there. In terms of the Indigenous or the social procurement, obviously a lot of work is going on. Obviously a lot more work still needs to be done. There have been, in terms of the Nunavut Agreement, some work done up north, some really big steps up north. Ongoing work between with ISK, Indigenous Services Canada, PSPC, and Indigenous reference groups is going on in terms of looking at how we can move this forward. And finally, I would note that the recently released Treasury Board directive on the management of procurement has also re-emphasized or refocused procurement planning and looking at market access and allowing socioeconomic priorities.
Thank you. Let me just describe what happened here. So Minister Duclos started out with brag points at the very beginning, as if his government has done this phenomenal job with regard to Indigenous relations. But then when he was asked for a proof point, he wasn't actually able to deliver it. Instead, he had to defer to Mr. Ermith, who of course is a bureaucrat within the department. Now, Mr. Ermith did his best to answer that question, but still not sufficient. Because at the end of the day, there is a mandate letter that was written that asks this government, Minister Anand, who represents the procurement process, to procure a minimum of 5% of all contracts with Indigenous-led businesses. The Liberals have failed. They have not done this. Mr. Duclos is not able to answer my question, which further proves that they have failed. It's sad. It's absolutely sad. Meanwhile, a sole source contract was given to China for the acquisition of PPE. But Mr. Duclos would like Canadians to believe that somehow that sole source contract with China benefited Indigenous-led businesses. It's laughable. It's a disgrace. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. We will now go to Mr. Weiler for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome Minister Duclos to OGGO once again. And thank you to all the witnesses for joining today to answer questions as well. Minister, you mentioned green procurement in your last answer, so I do want to pick up on that. I saw an article recently that referenced a large bridge in Vancouver that's sourcing imported steel from China, which is obviously high emitting because of coal power use. Whereas if we could have sourced it domestically, it would have been much lower emissions because of our 83% clean grid in Canada. But the province didn't value the carbon content and rather just the bottom line cost. Of course, sourcing domestically would have a benefit in supporting local natural resource sector and good paying jobs. And I know the Treasury Board through the Greening Government Program is seeking to reduce the embodied carbon of building materials by 30% by 2025. And it's also something that I'm hearing often from local governments in my riding that they're looking how they can do things like this. So I was hoping you could share with the committee how you plan on accomplishing this target and what potential changes to criteria and procurement decision making might be able to feed into it.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and we're very proud and privileged to have you around the group. You, in just a few words, you summarize both the environmental value of green procurement, but also the significant economic benefits of doing so. Now we are at the start of an incredibly important revolution, both from an economic, an environmental, and a social perspective. Now, what we are currently seeing is across the world, both in financial and economic terms, what we're seeing is or thing that will transform our economy and will make the Canadian economy and Canadian industries in many, many cases more competitive than they were before. As you suggested, we took into account the impact on the environment of our economic and procurement activities. So, if I may quickly allude to the fact that this is particularly important in the context of our relationship with the new American administration, who is focused so much on connecting the environment and the economy. I've had personally several meetings with the chair of the Council for Environmental Quality at the White House. She and her team have been extremely clear that we should be working together, jointly together, in part to reduce the temptations of protectionism, certainly in the south of the borders, to build stronger supply chains along steel, along aluminum, along production of cars and other goods require increasingly clean and green input and processes. So we are extremely well positioned, as you have suggested, to use the procurement in part from Canada. We procure every year $18 billion. In the United States, they procure close to $600 billion of goods and services. So you see how important it is to work with them. And if we add other governments, and and the White House and our government have included 23 other governments. We've had a meeting just a few weeks ago. We are in the trillions of dollars of green procurement over the next years. So it's really a revolution. And I'm glad that you're not only interested in that, Patrick, personally, but obviously that our government is going to be key in being part of that revolution and driving it in the years to come.
Thank you. I just want to continue on that because I did see the news a couple months ago about the agreement with the U.S. on that. And I was just hoping we could get into some of the specifics of what that would look like. So how do you factor that into procurement? Because like you mentioned, $18 billion in procurement is a huge amount. So how do we effectively measure the cost and the value of embodied carbon when we're doing that? Like what are some of the different criteria angles that we're considering on that?
Thank you again, Patrick, for that question. We have both a Greening Government Center and a Greening Government Strategy. The Greening Government Strategy is part of the renewed and enhanced climate strategy that we announced in December. So it's obviously complementary with the many other policies and investments that we're conducting. So it's part of a big exercise. So within the Secretariat, we are currently developing with the scientific community the measures, the procedures that we must use to, as you said, to value and to monitor and eventually to enforce the green supply characteristics that we want to see as we go along that revolution. So we have a lot of work, however, to measure, to first to define, then to measure, then to monitor, and eventually to influence, even to enforce the ways in which we want to procure goods and services in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Weiler. We've now come to the end of the Minister being here. And so we want to thank the Minister for coming for his appearance. We are about to go into continuing, but before we do that, I do believe we have one witness who hasn't had a chance to do a sound check. And so, Mr. Clerk, if we can do a quick sound check on that witness, and then we can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared to do that now. Hello, Mr. Greenoff. Welcome to the meeting. If I could ask you to speak briefly into your microphone, please.
Hello. I do apologize for wasting everyone's time with my late sound check due to the problems logging into the meeting. It took the classic restart the computer twice, and then everything worked just fine. So here I am, a little late, but in for the time.
Okay, one moment, please. I'm just waiting for the okay from the interpreters. One moment, please. Yes, they're saying that your sound is good. Thank you very much, Mr. Greenoff. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You may continue.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that. And so we will now start into our second hour, and we'll go in our first round with 6 minutes each. And we will start with Mr. McCauley for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Purvis, can we just go back to the questions I was trying to ask of the Minister earlier about the Treasury Board approval process for the $650 million for, you have it written right in your summary, funding will be used to purchase, store, deploy, operate mobile health units. So I'm just wondering, it's gone through the process. How much of that is going toward SNC, and for what purpose, if they're not being used and not requested by anyone?
Thanks very much. It's an item that actually was in the estimates last year, and it's a reprofiled amount. So, in other words, at the end of the period, the authority expired, and it is coming back for the purchase of those items. Mr. McCauley, it's a great question. I don't have details specifically on how much went to SNC. That's something we would have to follow up with the department on.
Who would have sat at, from the Treasury Board, who would have sat at the table when this went through the process Like someone surely would have said, well, wait a moment, no one wants these. Why do we need another $651 million? Is it not kind of the process of Treasury Board to challenge some of these spending requests?
Reprofile decisions are made from the Minister of Finance, and in terms of consideration of being in an estimates, there's Treasury Board authorities that are established. As it pertains to the specific questions about that initiative, a lot of that's under cabinet confidence. Thank you.
Okay. I want to go back again to the horizontal line, the $30 million to support regional air transportation.
Yeah.
Can we be guaranteed that none of this money is going to Air Canada to eventually maybe make its way into their C-suite pockets?
So let me just explain to you.
We're being asked to approve this money, but we don't seem to know what it's for.
Well, no, I do have details on what it's for. I can walk you through that real quick.
Just how much of that is going to airlines of the $30 million, and is any going to Air Canada?
They are contributions to municipalities, provinces and territories, not-for-profit organizations, businesses.
Yeah, and I read that line where it says businesses. So what businesses?
It would be a question for the department to be able to answer. We do know that these are transfers that would be going through the regional development agencies to these organizations.
Right. But again, my understanding would, Mr. Purvis, I'm going to interrupt. I know we should ask the department, but of course the departments don't show up for the estimates half the time. They refuse to, and I know OGGO on that have not shown up, but it would go through the Treasury Board process. Treasury Board's role is to, in a way, protect the taxpayer and make sure that the funding is used appropriately. Does anyone from Treasury Board look and say, well, hold on, what's this money for? Like, what's the point of the Treasury Board if we're just going to get, let's ask someone else?
It's 2 years of support for regional businesses and airports, subject to contributions and grants that are defined by the regional development agencies. And so it's for me to know where the end result will be. I don't have that information. That is something that the regional development agencies and Industry Canada would be better placed to respond to.
But it would be part of the Treasury Board process when they kind of their application process, I would assume. Let me just move on. Department of Finance is more of a simple question, I think. There's $49 million for the International Finance Corporation. It's put as a Treasury Board or Vote 10L, so a loan. I'm curious, why is that as a loan? Because I think it appears elsewhere as buying a share.
Yeah, so Mr. Greeno can correct me on this one, but when we deal with international organizations, you're buying shares of these international organizations.
Okay. No, I'm just curious, why does it show as a loan?
Because it's funding that they would receive back. It's effectively money that you give to an international organization, but it's callable capital.
Okay, let me ask just a last question. You can get back on this. I've asked this before and we haven't heard a response, so I'll ask it again. Is how many exemptions have been granted on Treasury Board submissions over the last year? And how does that compare to previous years? And then also, how many conditional Treasury Board approvals, again, have been granted over last year compared to previous years? And the reason I'm asking is, I'll be blunt, I don't get a lot of confidence that the Treasury Board is doing its role of oversight of taxpayers' money. I mean, we asked the Minister Duclos very clearly about the oversight of the $100 billion wage subsidy that we saw go to wealthy hedge fund managers. We saw it go to share buybacks, company payouts. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I didn't oversee it. It's like, who? It's kind of like the Watchmen comic. Like, who's watching the Watchmen? If Treasury Board is not watching, who is? So again, I'm out of time, but maybe we can get back to our committee on those 4 specific items, please.
Thank you, Mr. Macaulay, and thank you, Ms. Purvis. And as always, and I know I've repeated this to you many times over the year, but if when you reply, if you can send that to the clerk and then he will distribute it to the members, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll now go to Mr. McKinnon for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci à l'ensemble des employés.
Thank you to the officials from the Treasury Board Secretariat for being here. And I would like to once again express my disappointment with regards to the questions asked by the opposing parties on many different opportunities. We've had Minister Anand, Minister Duclos, Minister Murray, all three ministers. And each time a question is asked of one minister, that is something that is in the file of another minister. And we've seen this happen repeatedly. And I would like to note that this must be an opposition strategy that is being used. But it's not at all productive. And so I just wanted to make the observation. And I note, Mr. Macaulay, that you decry the wage subsidy that's kept millions of Canadians on the job. So this is noted as well, but I'm concerned for our civil servants, and the human resource function does fall under Treasury Board Secretariat. So I'm going to ask a relevant question to the officials that are here with us with regards to return to work. Return to work is something that concerns a lot of civil servants and federal civil servants throughout the federal civil service. And we are now, this is National Civil Servants Week. So I would like to thank and recognize all the civil servants, and you also, who are here with us today. Could you provide us an update with regards to return to work? This is an issue that concerns many civil servants in my riding of Gatineau, and also civil servants throughout Canada. Thank you for this question, Mr. Chair. As I referred to last time that we met, we're working on back-to-work plans with all the departments responsible for managing the wellness of their employees. The support that we provide is support for them so that they can clarify and guide how they are able to foresee or design a post-pandemic workplace. So the role right now at the Treasury Board is to bring forth clarifications so that we will be able to guide with certainty the return to work of civil servants, the way that they will continue to work. Perhaps some of them will continue to work from home. So we are looking at this. This is my next question. How are these plans progressing? And more specifically, what is the strategy in order to deal with working from home in the post-pandemic period? Could you explain to the committee how this strategy is evolving? It's evolving well. Different elements of this strategy, well, we can't say a strategy, but rather it's support that we provide to the departments. And we are focusing sometimes on technical issues, such as how to manage issues around data security, how to make decisions that have to do with the place of work for jobs in the civil service. We need to identify and to define and to provide guidelines to the department so that they are able to develop their own reintegration plan for the post-pandemic period. So unions are raising these issues at the start of bargaining for the collective agreement. So how are you approaching this round of bargaining? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's quite difficult for me to share the approach that is being used with the bargaining agents. I can say that we have been apprised of the fact that this is a focus of the unions, and we will proceed in a collaborative fashion. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. We will now go to Ms. Chabot for 6 minutes.
Thank you. I will join my voice to that of Mr. McKinnon. Employees of the public service deserve to be congratulated for their resilience and their work during this very difficult period that we've gone through. But I will still ask you some questions. These questions are not in bad faith. I just would like to have some answers. So I'm going to add to one of the questions that I asked of the minister. It has to do with the $7 million in compensation. I did receive the answer, but you said that your funding was sufficient right now. Are you able to tell us for the employees, how many employees total will be compensated through this funding? And do you have the breakdown for 2019 and 2020? How much money or will be left to pay afterwards? Thank you for this question. So first of all, if we take the agreements of 2019, we were estimating that there would be approximately 17,000 employees, former or retired employees, that would make a request for compensation according to 1B of the agreement. Up until now, we have approximately 9,000 employees that have made requests. For the 2020 agreement with the Public Service Alliance of Canada, we believe that the number of former or retired employees, approximately 54,000. However, as you know, we have not yet launched this process, so it's quite difficult to provide an exact figure. It is important to specify that that agreement and these requests are made on a voluntary basis. We don't do this automatically. People have to make a request. And then we try to reach as many former or retired employees as we can. The 7 million is not only, well, it's not only the money that was set aside. Some monies were set aside in other supplementary budgets. And now for the 7 million, if we look at inaudible, we believe that 5,000 employees would be covered by this sum. In one of your answers, so you're saying 9,000 out of 7,000 have already made a request for 2019? Why is there this gap? Answer, it's on a voluntary basis. You should be able to reach them. Answer, we've done many things to try to reach them through social networks, mail-outs, the Association of Retired Public Service Employees. These are the requests that we've received up until now. Question, are there other agreements that remain to be signed for this part? Or for the other agreements that will be signed? Answer, the two agreements are the agreements. My other question will have to do with the stabilization of the Phoenix pay system. We know this is expensive. On April 1st, 2020, there was a team that was transferred to Shared Services Canada from the Treasury Board and had a mandate to test solutions and to recommend solutions to the government with regards to HR. What is the distribution of funds between the stabilization of the Phoenix pay system and HR and pay initiatives? So the funds that I've spoke to you about take into account the stabilization of the pay system only. Now, as for funds with regards to new pay systems, inaudible. I don't have this information because the funds need to be requested by Shared Services Canada. This department is now responsible for the next-gen system. What is the role of TBS? The role of TBS is to work jointly with our colleagues from Shared Services Canada to make sure that we have processes and policies in place and that can be transferred into the new pay system. And also, well, we work jointly with Shared Services Canada.
Merci beaucoup, Mademoiselle. Mademoiselle, thank you. So we'll now go to Mr. Green for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I just, I want to begin by replying to Mr. McKinnon's comments that perhaps some of the questions we might have been asking were not, in fact, in line with the responsibilities of the Treasury Board, and respectfully, disagree. And in fact, state on the record my disappointment that I don't feel that while I have a great amount of respect and indeed a friendship with the minister, the president of the Treasury Board, that he in fact answered any questions that were put to him from opposition. I mean, of course, it's always easy to answer questions that are coming from government when it's written by government. But I just want to note that the Treasury Board's responsibility is to lead the management of the agenda of the government and to oversee the implementation and effective delivery of cabinet-approved initiatives. In his mandate letter, he is to work to instill a culture of evaluation, measurement, evidence-based decision-making, and program and policy. And, within this, it goes on to talk about within the mandate letter, in relation to some of the comments that Mr. McCauley brought up, in which it appears Mr. McKinnon took some exception to, that they are continue to work to strengthen the oversight of the expenditure of the taxpayer dollars and the clarity and consistency in financial reporting, and to exercise due diligence regarding the costing analysis prepared by departments for all proposed legislation and programs. Now, unless I'm missing something 2 years in, I'm going to go back to the Hansard and review the questions that were here. But to be in an hour with the president of the Treasury Board and not get answers to basic questions that are presented is frustrating the process. And, it's not often that I agree with Ms. Harder, but she was quite right in her assessments of the government's failures. And so I would put to the members that are here as senior staffers that if in the briefing notes, in the opening statements and comments of the president of the Treasury Board, you are highlighting and touting things that you consider to be successes within the purview of your work, then you ought to be open to fair questioning and you ought to be able to provide fair response given how far we are into this year. And so I wanted to put that on the record, and I'm happy to hear any further comments from my friend, Mr. McKinnon, and I'll continue to ask questions that are pertinent to these supplementaries. He's not the only person who's asking pertinent questions as it relates to these estimates. And I'd like to ask, for instance, the Public Health Agency of Canada is requesting $1.5 billion under Vote 1 for medical research and vaccine developments. And the funding would support the acquisition and deployment of COVID-19 vaccines. Now, I've had an ongoing issue with the way that our government has spent close to $1 billion on vaccines, and yet it appears in all of the contracts, contribution agreements, funding announcements, we seem to never receive any kind of preferential purchasing or procurement agreements or equity positions. And I would think almost for $1 billion, we should be well positioned to have our own nationalized production of vaccines, but that's for another question. So I'll ask quite simply, how much of the funding that has been requested be allocated to vaccine purchases that have already been negotiated? Negotiations have happened, contracts have been signed, and now we're back with additional funding. So through you to Mr. Purvis, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Green. So in terms of support for vaccine purchases and so forth, the funding is going to go towards its COVAX facility agreement and securing options to purchase vaccine doses for Canadians as they become available. The one thing I would say is authorities typically work within a fiscal year, and vaccines, viruses, and the development of vaccines don't often respect fiscal year ends. And so a lot of that 1.5 billion that you're looking at was given authority by Parliament already last year. But given the delay in the actual,
so to be clear, we're still continuing to take from COVAX. This isn't to contribute to COVAX. This is for us to procure from COVAX. Is that correct?
This is ongoing procurements that are going on the vaccine side, but it's all about the payments. So these are to support payments that have to be made for the purchase of vaccines post royal assent, effectively, of this supplementary.
Mr. Chair, was it not just recently announced, I think maybe even at the G7, that we are going to be also providing additional funding towards the COVAX facility? And this is where, I think within this committee, you've heard me talk quite a bit about international patents, TRIPS waivers, us hoarding the international market with the highest portfolio, taking from COVAX. Are we actually giving doses to COVAX, or are we taking doses from the COVAX facility still, as we seem to be touting being in a surplus position of vaccine procurement?
Again, I could speak to the fact that this is for the payment authority to be able to continue to contribute to that facility.
On top of what we've taken from in the last fiscal year?
In the last fiscal year, effectively, because of the delay in payments on vaccines, the authority that was provided last fiscal year is being reprofiled into this fiscal year in order to be able to make those payments.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll now go to our second round, and we will start with 5 minutes with Mr. Paul Hughes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma question s'adresserait à Madame.
Thank you. My question is from Mrs. Kalin. I would like to know, with regards to 699, in the beginning of the pandemic, local managers were attributing special leave, 699 leave, according to different requests. Has the Treasury Board standardized these requests? Is there now a directive that is more clear as to who can have access to this special leave under 699? I can answer this question. The Treasury Board has shared guidelines with the departments in order to guide the application and to guide requests under 699. And it's quite important to put the emphasis on the fact that this is a decision that is considered on a case-by-case basis. So each situation where a civil service makes a request is considered separately. And so this is why a manager must look at the specific context of each request when they are evaluating or assessing this leave. Have you more clearly defined what are reasons that are eligible? Yes. Yes. An update has been put up on the Canada.ca website in November. Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Chair, I believe that we can have unanimous consent from the committee to come back to the motion that I tabled to ask the government to have all the documents, contracts with regards to. Could we put this motion back on the agenda? This is my question.
Mr. Paul Hughes, I guess I'll look around the room and see if there is agreement to continue the debate on Mr. Paul Hughes's motion. Mr. McKinnon, I see your hand is up. Mr. McKinnon?
Je demanderais, Monsieur le Président, pour ce que vous...
Mr. Chair, this is a deviation from what was expected. I don't think that his motion has anything to do with the subject under review today. Could you indicate to us if this is in order or not?
So Mr. McKinnon, the order would be that the motion can be brought back if there is agreement amongst the members to bring it back up, and that's why I'm asking, is there agreement from the committee members to do so?
No.
And I'm looking around.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. Green.
I believe due notice was provided on the motion, was it not? And if so, why would we need to have unanimous consent?
We don't need unanimous. We don't need unanimous consent. We just need agreement to re-table. We suspended the motion at the last meeting. It's at that in that situation. It's open to be brought up at any time by anybody to bring it back to the table. Mr. Paul Hughes has brought it back up, and now it's for the committee to determine.
So it's a debatable and votable motion, just to be clear?
At this point in time, it's to see if there's agreement. If there's a majority, then is. If not, if it's on division, or whether, if not, then we would go to a vote. Mr. Duran, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe when we left it off, and I would defer to the clerk or the analyst, but I believe we were debating an amendment at the time, and Mr. McKinnon had the floor at the time. So if it is brought back, I just want to make sure that Mr. McKinnon gets the floor back, because we were debating that particular amendment to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. I'm just going to check on that with the clerk. I think you're correct, but I just want to correct on that, and I'll be just for a second. Sorry, Ms. Paul Hoos, and then I'll go to Mr. McKinnon.
Donc, est-ce que, Monsieur le Président...
Mr. Chair, has the clerk informed us of the procedures? Right now, I believe there's no debate on this, and we can go directly to a vote.
Sorry. So, Mr. McKinnon, you also had your hand up. I just quickly wanted to hear that before I ruled.
Well, please rule, Mr. Chair, but I do agree with Mr. Drouin that I had the floor.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask the clerk just to briefly, if he can comment on with Mr. Drouin's whether that is a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is Mr. Paul Hoos is moving a motion that the committee retake up the debate on his motion, which had been moved on June the 7th, but the debate had been adjourned on that day on the motion, which means the motion basically stays where it is until the committee takes a decision, a majority decision, to take up the debate again. The mechanism to do so is what we call a dilatory motion, which is what Mr. Paul Hoos has moved, that we proceed to consideration of his motion moved on June 7th. A dilatory motion is traditionally non-debatable. Actually, the question is put immediately and decided by a majority decision. If you want, Mr. Chair, pursuant to the order adopted on January 25th, any decision that is not unanimous or decided on division has to be decided by a recorded division. Thank you.
So let's go to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And so with that said, we do not see basically an agreement, so I will call for a vote. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question is on the dilatory motion in the name of Mr. Paul Hoos that the committee resume consideration of his motion moved on June the 7th, 2021. I will begin the recorded division. Monsieur Drouin.
Against.
Mr. Joe Howry.
Against.
Mr. Kosmierczak.
Opposed.
Mr. McKinnon.
No.
Mr. Weiler.
Against.
Ms. Harder. I beg your pardon, Ms. Harder. I can't hear your vote, and I don't see your camera on.
She's absent, Mr. Clerk. You must move on.
Mr. Chair, I'm not hearing any vote from Ms. Harder. Mr. McCauley.
Yes, please.
Monsieur Paul Hoos.
Oui.
Madame Chabot.
Oui.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
That's yes, Mr. Green?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that is yeas 4, nays 5.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. It's defeated. We will not resume the debate. And so we will continue with the round of questioning. We'll go to Mr. Kosmierczak for 5 minutes.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Who's calling the Conservative whip?
Har, har, har. It's silly
Mr.
season, not
Mr.
bad humor
Kosmierczak,
season,
your time is
sir.
running.
Thank you very much.
A point of order,
Mr.
I think we should agree to allow Mr. Kosmierczak to have his full time and take away Mr. McKinnon's and not take away Mr. McKinnon's intervention.
Mr. Kosmierczak, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Really do appreciate it. So a question for our witnesses. PHAC is requesting about $1.1 billion under Vote 1. Operating expenditures, Vote 5. Capital expenditures and Vote 10. Grants and contributions for border and travel measures and isolation sites related to COVID-19. And the funding would be used to implement enhanced border and travel measures relating to COVID-19 travel restrictions for individuals entering by land or at the 4 designated Canadian airports, and for federal designated quarantine sites across Canada. Strengthen national border and travel health program, including enhanced compliance and enforcement, such as home checks, safe voluntary isolation spaces in municipalities, and enhanced surveillance initiatives to reduce COVID-19 importation and transmission at points of entry. It's interesting, this funding request is interesting. In Windsor-Essex, we received about $18 million from PHAC for an isolation and recovery center. This was through the Safe Voluntary and Isolation Space program, and it was used for temporary foreign workers who were working on farms. And Windsor-Essex received 8,000 temporary foreign workers per year. And so this was a critical piece of our COVID-19 response. We had large outbreaks on our farms during the year. And so this isolation and recovery center provided us with a bit of breathing space, took a lot of pressure off of our ICUs and our hospitals and our healthcare system, and allowed us to safely quarantine and isolate temporary foreign workers who were COVID positive or who had been in contact with folks that were COVID positive. And so I just wanted to ask you, first and foremost, is how many isolation sites that were federally funded, how many sites were federally funded in Canada? And this is an open question. I'm not sure who this is directed to.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Kmirchuk. We will have to get back to you with the number of vaccine centers or quarantine facilities that were funded. We have more information on testing and so forth.
Okay, gotcha. That's not a problem at all. This was a success story for our region. I have to tell you, this program was absolutely critical, and I have to tell you as well, another piece of good news for our region is that we were able to provide about 6,000 vaccines to those temporary workers, to those migrant farm workers, and so that was a great success, and that was a great collaboration between all levels of government, but also the Windsor-Essex Local Immigration Partnership, the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit, the Migrant Worker Community Program, and the Workplace Wellness for Agricultural Workers Task Force as well too, and 16 organizations. So just wanted to share that with the committee. Those isolation sites, that was a critical piece of that, of our COVID-19 strategy. I wanted to ask in terms of the home checks, I think you raised the idea of home checks. What are PHAC's compliance targets for home checks?
Thank you, Mr. Kmirchuk. I think that PHAC would be best placed to be able to respond to that question. And we'd be happy to follow up with them on that.
No, not a problem at all. I understand that some of these more specific questions would probably require consultation directly with PHAC, so that's not a problem at all. Can you tell me just in general, I know that the minister had talked about the fact that the health and safety measures and the COVID-19 measures really were the bulk of the requests that were made during the supplementary estimates. And so I wanted to ask you if you can just provide us with some of the highlights in terms of health and safety, some of the health and safety expenditures in the budget, or excuse me, in the supplementary estimates.
And
sure,
Mr. Spurs, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to answer that if you could, because just to reflect for Mr. McKinnon in his point of order, so for Mr. Kmirchuk to get a couple extra seconds here, although his time is up, please.
Just very, very briefly, Mr. Chair, of the 24 billion voted, about 11.2 billion is COVID related. And there's about, on the statutory side of the 17 billion statutory adjustments that we forecast only, about 9 billion is related to COVID. So that takes it to about 20 billion of about half of the total voted and statutory is related to COVID, and they're earmarked clearly in these supplementary estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis. We'll now go to Ms. Chabot for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. A very quick question. With regards to supplementary amounts for vaccines in the 1.5 billion, is there a part of this that is reserved to development initiatives for vaccines in Canada or in Quebec? Thank you for the question. Mrs. Chabot?
I don't have a breakdown of how much that would be specifically for domestic production and in particular with respect to Quebec. We would have to, the Public Health Agency of Canada would have a better line of sight on that.
Can you provide the amount? Could we obtain this amount, this information at a later date?
The Public Health Agency of Canada would be better placed to be able to provide the answer to that question.
Bon, bien, sur un autre sujet.
On another subject, we know that at the Government of Canada, there are departments and organizations that will be able to push back funding. Do you know if there are many organizations that could make requests? That's what the Treasury Board document said, that there might be more requests than normal, that for amounts of money be carried over from one year to the next. Do you think that there are federal organizations that will ask for monies to be carried over?
Great, thank you very much, Madame Chabot, for the question. It's a great one. You are correct. Like when we look at these supplementary estimates, there's a portion of it that is funding that the government had authority for from Parliament last year. That's moved over into this current fiscal year. And then there's a portion of it that is dedicated to new initiatives. Of course, everything that is in these supplementary estimates that are seeking payment authority on the voted basis has been approved by Treasury Board already. When we look at typically what happens in a cycle is departments that are seeking reprofiles normally we'll see more of those in supplementary estimates B. But given the fact that many of these reprofiles have to do with COVID, there's more than normal, I would say, and as a consequence, it's important to have these in supplementary estimates A.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
Fight for COVID, yeah.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I know that the folks back home in Hamilton, when they're tuning into this and they're trying to follow along here, they're looking for easy ways to have access to what's happening with the spending. And I'll try to end this on a good note, that the PBO noted that while there had been a lack of publicly available information published by the government on the actual spending, that there had been some improvements worth highlighting. And it identified the TBS as providing monthly estimated expenditure reports to OGGO, and that it incorporated data for the measures to include in the estimates process. And as was noted in the opening comments, that it was added to InfoBase. So my question is very simple. Will the Treasury Board provide regular updates of COVID-19 measures in one central document along with the actual spending data?
We'll continue to work with the committee through the motion that has been established. Of course, we always frame it as estimated expenditures, Mr. Green, because it's not actual until such a time as it's in the public accounts. And we'll be working with departments try to finalize estimated expenditures alongside the work that our colleagues at the Comptroller General's office and finance and so forth are doing to finalize the actual expenditures.
Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll now go to Ms. Harder for 5 minutes. Ms. Harder, has your, yes, okay, I see you. So your telecommunications has been fixed and you're back on. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I actually will raise a point of order because I wasn't able to turn on my camera and vote before. And I was going to let it go and just allow us to continue discussing with the department officials. However, Mr. McKinnon found that very funny that I wasn't able to vote, and I take issue with that. And so I am going to raise a point of order, and I'm going to ask that you accept my vote as yes.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. We would have to have a unanimous consent to re-entertain the vote. So I'm looking to see, is there unanimous consent to redo the vote? No, I'm not seeing unanimous consent, unfortunately, so we can't.
Point out, Mr. President.
Point of order. Thank you. We're at the end of the parliamentary session, and for the record, especially Mr. McKinnon, he was laughing, saying that we didn't have any control over our MPs, and this is a technical problem, and it really shows the limit of virtual parliament, and how an MP was not able to vote on a motion in a committee of the House of Commons because she was attending virtually. So let's remind ourselves that there are limits to virtual parliament, and you have and that people refuse that my colleague could vote.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Hoos. Sorry, is there another point of order?
On that point of order, Mr. Chair. On the same point
McKinnon,
of order.
you have a point of order?
No, on the same point of order, on
okay.
Mr. Paulus's point of order, I would just simply remind you, Mr. Chair, with all my great respect, that the Speaker has repeatedly reminded us that we are to be available with a secure connection and at all times attentive to parliamentary proceedings as we do navigate this extraordinary Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're getting into debate here on this, Mr. McKinnon. We are order. Order.
Mr. Chair.
Order. Ms. McKinnon has to be respectful, and so I will ask you to be respectful of every committee member here in your response. Mr. McKinnon, you have the floor.
As I was concluding, Mr. Chair, we have been with a secure connection and attentive at all times to parliamentary proceedings. This is an extraordinary time, but Mr. Paulus's point of order is in fact not a point of order because of those directives and that convention that has been set down from the Speaker of the House.
Mr. Drouin.
Mr. President, point out.
Point of order. Mr. Drouin.
Juste sur le même point d'ordre.
Yes, on the same point of order. And sometimes I understand that we can have issues for some MPs with regards to their connections. And I have a lot in April, May, June 2020. Now we are in 2021, and all MPs should know by now what the procedure is. And I'd also like to remind the MPs that last Friday, many MPs tried to provide a vote in a non-traditional way.
Mr. Drouin, we are entering into debate. Mr. Drouin, order. Mr. Drouin, order. Mr. Drouin, order. Order.
Se rendre à la
chambre order, Mr. Drouin.
N'était pas là en l'ordre. Donc,
Mr. Drouin,
mature dans ce débat.
Order. Order. This is becoming a debate. We are going to end this debate. It's not points of order, and so we will move on. There was not unanimous consent to have another vote. The floor is to Ms. McKinnon, or sorry, to Ms. Harder. And in light of the time, as we look at the time and being respectful of our services, we will go with 4 minutes for Ms. Harder and 4 minutes for Mr. Johari. Ms. Harder, 4 minutes.
Quick point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
I will quickly let you have this, Mr. Green.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just for my own clarity, and I apologize if I don't know, but is it against procedural committee procedural standing orders to introduce a motion twice? Or could Ms.
No,
Harder
the
not
motion could be entered at any time by anybody. The motion was about coming back to debating Mr. Paul Hoos's motion. That was what it was about, and the vote was to not reintroduce at that point in time. So another vote could be done.
Thank you.
But this time, Ms. Harder, you have 4 minutes and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Mr. Kitchen, I appreciate the clarifying point that Mr. Green just made. And I would wish then to bring forward the motion that Mr. Pierre-Paul Hoos brought forward earlier.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. As we don't have, we will call for a vote on the motion as being brought back to the table. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the motion is, the question is on the motion by Ms. Harder to resume consideration of the motion in the name of Mr. Paul Hoos moved on June 7th.
Point of order, Mr.
Point of
Chair.
order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I do believe a review of the rules would reveal that you cannot move the same dilatory motion twice in a meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Ms. Chabot, your hand is up.
Merci.
Thank you. My concern, whether we can or not vote again, is that the time for the debate is insufficient. The meeting has to end in a few minutes, and I would say that I will have to leave at the end of this meeting. And so I am asking that the meeting be adjourned. This has no bearing on the vote or not, but there won't be any debate.
Can't adjourn on a point of order. Ms. Chabot, we cannot adjourn on a point of order. And I'm not aware of any impediment for the motion being moved again, however.
But point of order, Mr. Chair. I would ask you to revise the rules and consult the clerk. You cannot move a same dilatory motion twice during a meeting. I cannot ask the committee to adjourn twice during a meeting. It's the same type of motion that was introduced by Mr. Pierre-Paul Hoos.
Thank you, Mr. Drouin. We'll just suspend for a second. and I was bringing the meeting back to order. Appreciate that. We've had some discussions, and there's sort of a right and wrong answer on this as to where we're at. But with that said, I think at this point in time, due to the lateness, I'm going to rule in this case that we can't re-enter the motion today, but we'll get further clarification on that. And so, Ms. Harder, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, thank you for consulting with regards to that matter. I would move a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. We have a motion to adjourn.
So wait a minute, point of order, is that dilatory? Never mind.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today and appreciate that. And with that said, I'm not seeing any discontent to that, and so the meeting is adjourned.